Howard Leib from Cornell Law School. And today we're exploring how artificial intelligence is reshaping music, film, television, and the critical balance we must strike between embracing innovation and protecting human creativity. Joining us today are Monika Mason, business consultant and course director for entrepreneurship in the audio industry at Full Sail University, and Jillian Clare, actress, director, podcaster, producer, and member of the SAG-AFTRA Board of Directors. Welcome, Monika. Welcome, Jillian. Happy to have you with us.
Hi.
I should note for my own purposes that I'm also a faculty author and instructor for eCornell's new entertainment law certificate program. The link to that will be in the chat room. And I'm also the author of the new entertainment law course at the MSLS program, which will be premiering this spring, as we say in the biz. Much of what we are discussing today, from intellectual property rights to AI regulation to how AI will affect the industry and affect society, all connects directly to the legal concepts and real-world applications that we cover in these online programs. We have an entire separate session and section on AI. And again, you can find those addresses soon, not yet, but soon in the chat room. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that both Monika and Jillian are graduates of Cornell's MSLS program. Yay! So we'll be taking your questions in the chat, and that you are a very important part of this program. We have some questions here, but we'd much rather deal with yours. So type them in, let us see them, and hopefully we will get to all of them in the time that we have here. If not, we'll get to as many as we can. We'll cover as many of your questions as we can, get them in there. And now, overture, curtains, lights, let's do it. So I'm going to start with a question for both of you. We'll go back and forth, but we'll start with both of you. So studies have shown that people often can't distinguish AI-created art from human-created art. And at least in some cases, people prefer the AI work. So, Jillian, I know you argue in your capstone for the MSLS program that AI cannot truly create art, only transform existing works. So how should audiences, and those of us in the industry, distinguish between authentic human performance and AI-created content? Does it matter if the art's created by humans or AI? And if so, why? Jillian, it was your capstone. Why don't we start with you?
Yes, it matters. Art is of a human channeling lived experience into performance, and AI can mimic form, but it can't replicate authenticity. And you're right, my capstone argues that creativity requires humanity and the imperfections and emotions and choices an actor brings to a role. And if audiences prefer AI, it's often because they don't know they're being shown AI. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Instagram reels where I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And then I'm like, wait a second, that's AI. But transparency and labeling are crucial because without it, we risk erasing the human heartbeat of storytelling. And as far as how audiences should distinguish it, there's, one word that says it all, and that's transparency. Just like film ratings, we need labeling like AI assisted or human performed that empowers audiences to choose. And it pressures studios and producers to think twice before leaning too heavily on AI.
Monika, what's your view on the subject?
I agree 100%. I think that, the AI didn't sit and go, how do I make this? It got that information from somewhere else and is creating, which I think is completely different from we as human beings being inspired by art or something that we've seen in creating. The AI is literally taking from something and using it specifically to create whatever it was prompted to create. So that human effort, I guess, really needs to be there in my opinion, for us to really accept it as, artwork that can be protected. I agree with Jillian and her argument from her capstone. Absolutely.
Well, in some ways, this is the age-old argument of art versus mass-consumed entertainment product, I guess. Because if humans can't tell the difference, and if humans sometimes prefer it, are we as industry people, because I agree with you, but are we as industry people, kind of sitting on in our Ivy League towers? Oh, that was good. And judging the AI created art as opposed to ordinary people going, oh, that I like that song. I mean, does it make a consumer difference, or are we just, are we just making differences where consumers don't?
That's a good question. I think that it kind of reflects what we see in the film and television industry as well, which is that many viewers are quite honestly sick of, the big things, the Marvel, the huge action things or redoing things over and over and over again, because people want something new. They want something that is human, that evokes something new within them. And I think that audiences are smarter than what a lot of us like to, say that they are. I think that they understand that it's human art versus AI generated art.
I think it's the connoisseurs, right? Like, to your question, Howard, I don't think the general consumer cares. But the people who are your audiophiles, your film fans, they care.
Right.
And as an industry, I think we need to care what those people think because those are the people that are, in my class I talk about that consumer ecosystem, right? The whales, the dolphins, and the minnows, right? And these fans of film and music are our whales that are driving the industry. They are literal fans, and we should do everything possible to create the art that they love that is driving the real money. I think a lot of the industry suits that are leaning more into AI are looking at finances. They're just looking at the money and they're not looking at the love of the actual art itself, how it's created, the people who create it, the authenticity of a human being. Like I watched an interview with Ludwig van Göransson about how he created the soundtrack for Wakanda Forever, and I was getting goosebumps
Mm.
watching him travel from continent to, different countries in Africa and talking about the sound. Can AI do that? No. And that's not fun for me as somebody who appreciates art. So,
I think too, we need to listen to the Letterboxd reviews because I don't think that people on Letterboxd would be very stoked about AI.
No, but they are very funny. Uh, I think what you're both saying, and again, I agree with you, is this is the entertainment industry's version of the problem, say, law firms are going to have, where the lower tier employees, the first year associates, the paralegals, can be replaced by AI. But then 10, 15 years from now, who's going to be around to be the higher levels as well? AI may be able to produce product, but can it produce insight and beauty is, I guess, the other issue. So, Monika, that leads us into my next question, which is for you. Lucky you. Uh, Almost 30% of the daily tracks uploaded to Deezer are AI created, with other services seeing similar numbers. While these tracks currently account for only 0.5% of all streams, and Deezer at least claims to be able to take most of them down, what is the long-term impact of AI music on the industry and on how society listens to, perceives, and interacts with music?
okay. So, as far as how society interacts with music, I don't think it's going to have a big impact. I could be wrong about that. I think how they perceive it is going to be very different. And this, in my opinion, creates a larger concern for the music industry because most music creators, not all, but a great number of music creators are already using computers to create a lot of their music. That in turn, when we went to streaming, people were complaining about spending 99 cents for a song because a lot of people go, well, what did they do? They let the computer create it for them. So why am I spending this kind of money on the track? So what I think is going to happen is AI for the creators, they're like, oh, this is so cool. I can, get access to more loops and this and that. But to the consumer is going to be like, well, this is just another computer generated piece of work. Why do I need to spend money on it? And it's going to, in my opinion, devalue the art of making music. And so the real musicians out there are going to, and excuse me, I don't mean real musicians. I mean the,
The
gotta be careful.
artistes.
Everybody's instrument is different these days. Some people use a computer, some people are playing guitar. So to the musicians that are using guitars and drums, and unfortunately, they are going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to be collateral damage in all of this because of the AI. So, long story short, I think I don't know if I agree with that number about how much the percentage of music that's generated by AI platforms. I think it's way more than that. And a lot of distribution platforms are allowing artists to opt out of allowing AI to train from there, which we'll probably get into later today. But I think the number is higher, and I don't think the consumer cares until they go to purchase,
Mhm.
and then they continue to devalue the art from there. That's
Yeah.
just how
I think you bring up an interesting point, which is we haven't really differentiated so far in the discussion between AI, purely AI created music or film or TV, and AI assisted created music, film, TV, whatever it may be. And there really is a difference between those two things. Just as you said, people have been using computers to enhance sound all this time. And really, I think what the three of us are concerned about and talked about most here are AI created content as opposed to AI assisted content. And the Copyright Office agrees if it's purely AI created, you can't get a copyright on it. It needs human involvement in the creation, although none of us know how much human involvement is required.
And I don't think
Uh,
the consumer cares about copyright law. There's that. So, which is the underlining issue, right?
mhm.
We're the only ones that care about what copyright law says. The consumer does not care if the creator infringed on somebody else's work if they like it, right? So, to your point, yeah, we are very biased in our approach to, to the discussion. But I bet you if we went on the street and asked people, most of them wouldn't care.
Well, all three of us have a vested interest in keeping this industry alive.
Absolutely.
Yep.
We are starting to get questions in the chat, I am happy to say. So I'm going to pass some of those around. Let's see, we start with a question from George Earhart, who asks, why is a work created solely by AI more or less derivative than other artistic derivative methods? It's an interesting, both philosophical, legal, and practical question.
I mean, for me, it's that AI generated content is not creating its own thing. It is taking things off of training data sets, right, that have been informed by others' work. So right now, like WB is suing Midjourney because Midjourney lets subscribers essentially recreate any of their characters and put them in different situations. So they're claiming, mass theft in copyright. So, we're looking at AI as AI generated fully content as not just like a new way of making art. It's that you're taking other people's art and then reworking it to be how you want it to be. So for performers and actors, what you're actually doing is stealing my nose and putting it onto another person's face and creating a synthetic performer. And I have no way of saying, hey, that's me. I need you to take that down because that wasn't me. So for me, it's really about, AI is stealing the work that's already been done by humans and then just repurposing it a little bit and giving you something.
Mhm.
I'm playing devil's advocate here, and I've had this argument with people. I mean, you can say that humans do the same thing, not with a synthetic actor, obviously, but with other types of content where we hear other things and we synthesize them down. And that may be true, but we don't do it with the, I guess, scalpel-like precision of an AI. With a human, we add in our own experiences, our own backgrounds, our own prejudices, our own thoughts. AI doesn't have any of those, or at least they're not
Mhm.
supposed to. And we could go into that, but that shows up in the course. So sign up for the course for that. But it really is a different process. Generative AI doesn't think. It deals with probabilities. And it is a wonderful tool if you want to feed it in all the top 100 songs of the past decade and say, based on all of these, create me a song that's going to be a top 40 hit. And
Hmm.
I don't know if it would work or not, though I'm sure there are people out there doing it.
Mhm.
But that's not what a human being does. A
No.
human being's derivative work is different.
Yeah, you can look at even, Bridget Jones' Diary as an example. That's a film that's widely successful and was based on Pride and Prejudice. And, there's several different new works that have been based on stories of Shakespeare, but people are changing it to make it something new and bringing the story to life with new characters, new things happening. They're just taking inspiration. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Inspiration versus stealing.
And also giving credit where credit is due. And for, I know as humans, we make our own mistakes, but we also, for the most part, try to work within fair use, right? And AI isn't doing that, or at least most of AI is not. It's taking it without actual consideration of fair use laws or any type of licensing or giving credit to the original source in that context. Whereas you see that more with human creation, right? And again, to the creator's credit, we have an opportunity to speak to the creator and talk about the inspiration that brought that piece of work on. And like I used to use the example of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It took public domain characters and created something new, created a new story around that. And so, you know, again, we knew where these were coming from. We saw the inspiration. We don't get that with AI, and I think that's what a lot of people, it's not that we hate AI, we want it to be done fairly, legally, and accurately, right?
Well, that actually, thank you, George, for that question. That leads us into our next chat room question from Anna Rosa, uh, who asks essentially, what do you see coming down the pike in terms of future laws that will require or enable, either way, AI to operate in a more ethical manner in terms of business and I assume creation as well?
Licenses. It's got to be laws that require the license. And then one of my additional concerns, and I know this is something Jillian is definitely on top of, is also the right of publicity. Like we focus so much on the creative work, and from the music standpoint, it's the voice of the singer, right? So there's the work itself, and then there's the voice of the person that's in there. I think the laws on um, right of publicity have to somehow evolve to include protection from AI.
Yeah.
That's that.
I
That's
think that we need a national standard that mandates consent and compensation anytime a performer's for film, TV, music, anything, anytime a performer's likeness, voice, or work is used to either train or create AI, without that national mandate, performers on and musicians and, filmmakers that we're all powerless because tech companies have a blank check. They can do whatever they want. We need a national mandate.
That national is huge because otherwise we are going to be in a contract nightmare dealing with this from state to state, which I know right of publicity is already a state to state thing. So that national mandate is key, in my opinion, key for sure.
Legal footnote, as the lawyer in the room. For those of you who may not be aware, right of publicity is the individual's right, frequently performers, but not limited to celebrities, to control the monetization of their name, image, voice, likeness, the characters they use, etc. And that's one of the rights that we talk about when we're talking about intellectual property. In reference to something you just said, Monika, in terms of copyright extending, Denmark just passed a law, which is a brilliant law and incredibly creative, giving everybody a copyright in the digital recreation of their face. Now, it's brand new. It's only passed in the past few weeks. We will see how that plays out. But it's an interesting way to go. I will note, when you say, what about right of publicity? Most of the lawsuits that have been brought by the major companies, not all. The authors have been bringing them individually.
Mhm.
And with something like, some of you may remember from a year or two back, Hard on My Sleeve by Fake Drake and Not Quite the Weekend, which Universal had taken down. I'm not sure that there was a right to take it down, but the right of publicity doesn't belong to Universal. It would have belonged to Drake and The Weeknd, and they would have had to go forward and enforce that themselves. So there is a difference as to who controls the copyright, or there may be a difference, controls the copyright versus the right of publicity. And that may be one of the reasons that we're not seeing as many right of publicity lawsuits in reference to AI as we had. Let's see. My next question here, Jillian, is for you. We're back to your capstone, which, by the way, I read. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
The capstone, which I don't know if I said this already, but if you don't know, the capstone is the major project and paper you do at the end of your MSLS degree program. It gives you a nice piece of writing and research. And as I say, yours was quite interesting. So in your capstone, you highlight critical loopholes in the SAG-AFTRA AI contract language. Which loopholes do you think is the most dangerous for performers, and how would you propose fixing it?
I'd have to say that the most dangerous loophole right now is the vague consent that we have around digital replicas. Basically, the consent that we achieved in the contract allows producers to use the digital replicas so long as the script is not substantially changed. But what does that mean? Substantially changed. How? In what way? Is it one word? Is it you're adding eyeliner to my eyes? What are you doing? So I think, performers right now, they can be scanned without fully understanding how their likeness is going to be used. And unfortunately, sometimes we're seeing that with, pressure on set and the no real ability to refuse that. I've known actors who've even walked off of the set because they didn't want to be scanned. And that's not meaningful consent. That's coercion. So to fix it, we need contract language that's, guarantees advance notice, a clear written description of the replica's intended use. So if that's, we want to be able to change the lighting if it's a little too dark, or we want to be able to add in a couple words here, or be able to change you from the front seat of the car to the back seat of the car. So we need some sort of, contract language that guarantees that. And we also need the right to refuse without retaliation, because right now we don't have that. So I guess in other words, informed consent and not blanket consent is what we need.
Yeah, people I think focus on AI issues in connection with big name actors or writers or musicians, but they're the ones who are going to be least hurt at this point. I worry about, for example, extras. I mean,
Yeah.
we may do away with the entirety of the extras industry.
Yeah, the two biggest concerns when we were going through this process, I wasn't on the negotiating committee, but I was a strike captain during our strikes, and the two biggest concerns with AI was background actors and stunt performers, and will they be wiped out eventually?
I should note that you're here today speaking in your individual capacity, not as a
Correct. Yes.
representative of SAG-AFTRA. Probably goes without saying, but I'm the lawyer. What does it hurt to say it? All right. We have another question in the chat from Tanya. Thank you. Do you believe there's a moral responsibility to curb the advancement and usage of AI? To me, it feels as though we're going to make ourselves obsolete, she says.
Yeah, I think there is. I think we have a lot of moral and ethical questions to ask ourselves. And like Monica said earlier, none of us are saying we hate AI.
Right.
I'm saying we need to use AI as a tool, not as a replacement. And so that's where our industries are really struggling right now, is figuring out that balance. And I do think that, there's major moral implications. And for performers, when you replace one performer with a synthetic performer, which is the term created in our SAG-AFTRA contracts for completely generated performers, a synthetic performer, you're not only erasing my job as a performer, you're erasing hair and makeup, props, set, wardrobe, anybody who would have been on set. You're erasing hundreds of jobs instantly. So there is major moral implications to this.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a similar conversation with someone about Timberland, who had announced his entirely new AI artist and the backlash that he got from the industry. And a lot of people were saying, or other producers were like, "Wow, you just really slapped the face of all the artists that you've ever worked with, because you're completely replacing a real person. Even though it's your original music, there are artists out there that you helped bring through the pipeline, and now that was a complete smack in the face that you're now going to have this AI artist." And to your point, Jillian, it's a domino effect. It's not just, it's a talent that's not a real person. Hair, makeup, work, like, and this is how a lot of people got careers in other industries.
Mhm.
Right? So maybe somebody did something in a film, now they're doing costuming for music videos and that sort of thing. And I go back to what I said before. It's because I don't think it's about creativity. I think it's about money. What is the most efficient way for us to generate revenue without killing a budget?
Yeah.
AI generated content.
I alluded to earlier, it does away with the opportunity for people perhaps lower on the ladder
Mhm.
to learn their craft. I mean, my wife and I yesterday watched the Twilight Zone episode that had Robert Redford in it, and it
Oh,
was very early in his career. He played Mr. Death, and he wasn't a great actor yet. You could see that, there were, if you watched it, there were choices he made that were stiff and stilted, and knowing what he would become, it was fascinating to watch that. If we're replacing people at that level with AI, where are people going to become the next Robert Redford? It's just
mhm.
not going to be there.
Mhm.
Mitchell has a question for us. It is a part that's near and dear to my heart. Uh, I personally have an issue with a point in the current SAG-AFTRA agreement that allows the estate or the union to approve the use of a deceased artist's likeness. I think about the Whitney Houston hologram concert. Are regulations being discussed for ethical issues like this one? And it's near and dear to my heart because the law firm I used to be at represented Whitney, and I was the associate who represented her and worked with all the people who actually approved that concert. I don't anymore, and I wasn't involved in the concert, but I know or them well enough to be able to kind of picture the thought process that went into approving that. And I would add to Mitchell's question, or the counterpoint to Mitchell's question, if not the estate, then who? Or are we simply saying once you pass away, your image, likeness, etc., is locked in, and we can't use you anymore? Thoughts?
Well, that Mitchell, I agree. That was one of the things that really upset me during reading the contract, the MOA when it came out. And I immediately went and wrote a will, which I hadn't had before, but immediately did it and put it in the books. Because I personally don't want my likeness being used past my death. I think it's absolutely bizarre, but that's my personal opinion. And for the union, I know that it has been suggested, and I believe they are working on it. I won't speak for them, but that we create some sort of document that is either giving consent or not giving consent for each performer to sign and have uploaded into their profiles so that when they pass, if there's no estate, if there's no one to take over any sort of rights like that, at least the union has that on file, and the union will be able to say no for you or yes for you. But I think the death clause was really something that struck me because I hadn't really thought about that part of it. I was so focused on the here and now that when it came out and I read it, I was like, wait a second, that's crazy. They want to use our images after we're dead? Why?
Because that's been going on for a while for
Yeah.
AI. And in other areas, whether it be music or publishing, whatever, where you don't have to recreate the person. It's always been the estate or whoever the author approved to do so, who approved future uses of
Yeah.
such things.
And it's also something that I brought up during the ratification process. We did like a town hall, and something that I brought up was, did we discuss with studios how long they can keep a digital replica? How long are they able to store it past production being completed? And that wasn't something that was decided upon right now. It's just kind of, oh, it's there. So I think that's something for this next negotiation cycle when we go in next year, because it's already up in 2026, that I would like to see us fight for is how long a producer or studio is allowed to keep my digital replica post-production.
Hmm.
Our next question from the chat from Jason K is for both of you. He prefaces with, I'm an actor who is also gravely concerned about the encroachment of AI in our industry. But one thing that has been comforting to see is the general disapproval from avid audiobook listeners regarding AI narrators. For both of you, do you see the potential in engaging consumers of film, TV, scripted work, and music in rallying behind or supporting having actual human artists creating the work they love? And what are the best ways to do it?
I think I love that question because I always think about the memes that you see when people are like representative, right? Because
Yeah.
they're tired of talking to a robot.
I did that earlier today, yes.
Yeah. So I think that's what it's going to boil down to. I don't think the consumer is going to care until they feel like there's no connection, right? That's what I think. I think when the consumer feels like the connection is lost, then they'll start making a bigger deal about it. Right now, I don't think it's a big enough deal to them because I mean, the word consumer, they're consuming, right? And not to sound like an old lady in the room, but there was a time when we were more engaged with our artwork, right? We, from the music standpoint, I used to lay on the floor and read the lyrics and the liner notes and look at the artwork on the album cover. And then with films, I would go research that artist. Where are they from? Oh my goodness. I think that's what's going to end up happening in this process is just that we have to continue. And unfortunately, this is going to come through social media, which is going to further exacerbate the problem. But creating a authentic connection with the audience is going to be the thing that helps save us and brings the audience in our court in our fight against these overreaching contracts and such for AI.
And I think too, It's something we have to think about where, we as people in the industries have been spending years at this point talking about AI, thinking about AI, trying to figure out how we protect ourselves. And for consumers, all of these new tools and websites and all this is all new to them still. It wasn't too long ago that you couldn't create an image on one of these platforms, and now you can. So for them, it's probably new and exciting. It has that glow to it still, where they're like, "Ooh, what is this? Look at this cool little trick that I can do." And I think, over time, they'll start to understand. But I do think that, there's power in starting grassroots movements to inform people about how their AI generated content is being produced and telling them it's only being produced because you're actually stealing from an artist. And so I think it's going to be, a long journey to do some sort of informational campaign to
Mhm.
rally the consumer. And I think that grassroots movements are probably the best way to do that at the start.
Sounds like the sort of thing that could be a coordinated campaign between RIAA, the Academy, and a
Mhm.
few of the other industry groups out there. I will note that how to control AI, the various ways, are one of the topics we go over in both the eCornell course and the MSLS, there we go, course.
I know it's a
Uh,
tongue
and
twister.
hope, yes, hopefully those have gone up in the chat room, and the eCornell course is open for registration now. MSLS comes on board in the spring. All right, true confessions time, folks. This is actually my favorite of all the questions I put together for you guys, which was, are each of you currently using AI in connection with your own creative works? And if so, how?
No, I don't use it in my creative works.
Well, that was easy.
I've used AI in the sense of like having it help me write like an Instagram caption or
Mhm.
like telling me what good hashtags to use. Things that are more tool based. Again, it goes back to using tools versus substituting. And so, I like the program Grammarly when I'm writing an important email so that I know that I sound correct and my brain isn't like messing it up a little bit. Um, and there's different tools with Asana and Notion and all of these ways to make our lives a little easier, but they're tools. They're not substitutes. They're not giving me ideas. They're not telling me how to do things with my creative works. They're simply helping me stay on track.
Mhm. Yeah, same here. I have not used, same as Jillian. I've used Grammarly. I'll use ChatGPT to fix something I've said before I post it or use it. But I've not used it for any artwork. And I do in one of my assignments, and it's only for the assignment, and I tell them, if you don't have a logo and you want to create one and you don't have a connection with a graphic designer, I will allow you to get inspiration from something you want to create in AI, but you are not to use it. Like if you want to take it to a graphic designer and then create something more original, I support that. But I don't and like I don't want to sound like I'm so anti AI. To Jillian's point, it's a tool. I don't mind it helping you with something, but if we're talking about something that has trained from copyrighted works, I have an issue with that.
Mhm.
I that's really that's my hard stance on that.
Yeah. And the thing is too is like, so many people, I've seen so many posts being like, "Oh, you can fully have AI write a script now for you and blah blah blah. Look at how great this is." But the thing is that that script is stolen work. Last November, there was a huge article that came out that's, uncovered the fact that these data sets had been trained on over 100,000 scripts. It was like over 53,000 movies and over like 85,000 episodes of television. And those scripts were used to train the data sets. All of the dialogue, everything was taken from the scripts and used to train the data sets that, Meta and Apple and all of these companies used in their AI training. And so you're not actually creating a new script. Again, you're taking things that have already been written from other writers and making this program put together a few words for you.
What I've found is the best way to use the AI is only in connection with things where you already know the answer.
Yes.
Because one thing that doesn't get discussed nearly enough is the AI, and I quote, hallucinates. In other words, the AI doesn't know what it's talking about, but we use hallucinates because it sounds better. Upwards to, depending on which survey you look at, between 3 and 60% of what comes out of an AI is wrong. Now, it's harder to be wrong in a creative context, like as you're talking about, but I tend to use it more factually. I use it to help me organize things, to come up with verbiage, but I would never use AI, at least at this point, to answer a question for me because you can't rely on the answer.
Yeah.
It's not useful that way. As I say
Again,
to my
it goes back
classes,
to
if you
being,
go
no, it goes back to AI being a tool, not a substitute.
ahead. Which leads me into our next question from Martin, who thinks perhaps we're all being a bit of a Luddite here. Are we simply discussing the collapse of the buggy whip industry? Shouldn't the emphasis be on how we use the new tools? They aren't going to go away as long as the industry is driven by economics. How many people go to live plays today versus any other forms of entertainment? Well, let me take that last one first because I know the stat on this one. More people go to Broadway theater in New York City than go to all the Mets, Nets, Yankees, Knicks, whatever the Rangers, and I think I left out one of the basketball teams, get combined in a given year. So a lot of people go to live theater today. Though a lot of people use other forms of entertainment. As to the buggy whip question, I'll give that to you guys.
I mean, again, I think it goes back to learning how to use the tool, and our industry needs to figure out that balance. So AI can be used maybe to streamline post-production. It can be used to improve accessibility. It can be used to, make things easier on a line producer when they're figuring out the budget. There are ways to use AI. It's just we don't want to take away the human, and we don't want to take away the human job.
And we also want to protect the people, not just the creator, but it's the same for Jillian and myself, for people in the music industry. It's not that we're fighting against the technology's existence. What we want to do is make sure it's used properly and fairly, and that if something is training off of something that I'm just going to go back to the right of publicity issue, because I swear to Professor Leib's point, it hasn't been brought up enough. And I think it's because a lot of people aren't aware of right of publicity law, to be honest.
Mhm.
Um, if you are on screen and AI is training from your likeness, now you can show up in something that is against your religion, against your moral belief, like whatever. And I think that's some of what's getting missed here. We're not hating on the technology. We're advocating for responsible use, laws that are going to protect the industry, the people working in this industry, and the people who want to create and protect their creations. Because I'm telling you, if we let this get away from us, where are we going to? And I don't want to sound like a greedy capitalist, but uh, when you're creating these things, yes, you do it for the love, but you also want to make money, right? And so for the music side, if we're going to let everything keep training, now there's no license or very little use for the license. So how are you going to generate revenue for your
Mhm.
works if there isn't some sort of boundaries put on how these things are implemented into our industries?
Yeah, I'm not anti the technology. I've been playing with AI since ChatGPT 1 because it sounded interesting and fun and new. And I like following things like that. But there are issues that you have to be aware of. And we've kind of mixed them together or talked about them as if they were one, but they're really two aspects to the legals on this, which is the input, which is what is the AI being trained on. We've talked about that and what's in there, and also then the output, which goes to Jillian's comments about putting somebody's nose on you. The input one, there are cases that are working their way through the courts. We just had a huge settlement, or we may have a huge settlement for authors, a $1.5 billion settlement, biggest copyright settlement ever given, but the judges are thinking it might not be enough, actually. So we don't know where we are with that. Output is much more the what we're talking about in the film industry side, where what are you going to see on the screen and how was it created? And does it look like somebody else, or is it like somebody else's script? And you have to keep those separate when you're looking at the AI industry and the AI creations, because they are two separate sets of laws, rules, and potential infringements. All right, going back to the theater question, now that we've established how many people go, Lisa asks, do you see this impacting live performances, specifically live theater?
So, I mean, when we were going through the strike and after ratification of the contract, that was kind of one of my predictions, is that I think with the more AI generated content that comes out over the years, I do think that the people are going to flock to more local theater to find that human connection. If we let this get out of control and AI becomes the standard in filmmaking, I do think that live theater will become far more popular than it already is, which is very popular, as Howard said. And I may live in LA, but let me tell you, Pantages is sold out almost every night. Um, and I do think that we will see an explosion of live performances again, and even concerts, as people want to feel connection, especially in our world right now, where so many things you turn on the news and you're just like overwhelmed immediately. I think connection is going to be really important going forward.
And I mean, from a technical point of view, AI can play a lot of different roles in live theater, creating backgrounds, hopefully not, but creating scripts. We are even at the technological point where you could have a holographic actor interacting with a human actor. I'm not flocking to buy a ticket for that, but it could happen. So there are lots of different ways to do that. Let me encourage you guys to get your questions in. We've got less than 15 minutes left to go in this. I have some more questions. We'll take yours as long as the questions hold out. So, Monika, what do you feel is the best way to protect artists from AI created content?
That's a tricky question. So when you say from AI created content, do you mean
From being supplanted by AI content, created content?
goodness? Better educating yourself about what the consequences could be. As an educator of people in the industry, I like seeing and encouraging questions about, okay, what do I need to worry about? Because before it was just about royalties. Well, this is an aspect of the royalty, right? Your voice in the recording, whether you're as a feature artist on somebody else's track, or, I'm glad to see the conversation about wanting to be signed by a major label shrinking, which I'm a big fan of independent, and the independents are one of the most, if not the most affected group by a lot of the infringement that's happening on these platforms. Um, Obviously, the major labels have their voice, but I think educating yourself on how the technology can be used, how to leverage it, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to fight everything. You can figure out a way to make it work for you. But I go back to what I said before, know how to set the boundaries so you can protect yourself. Look at the artists that start out in their teens, right? And then, I look at like the Britney Spears and the Justin Timberlakes. And then when they grew up, everybody was having a fit that they're adults now, their content has changed. Something like this would make you ageless. Like you could stay in that teenage uh, state that you were in when you got popular, and they can keep monetizing from that. How are you going to benefit from that when you get older, right? If you signed a contract where you allowed the digital replicas of you at that age, or your parents sign it, because there's enough stories out here of parents not understanding the entertainment industry, signing contracts for their children just to get the money or the fame, and not thinking of things like this, right? Now you just cut yourself out of future royalties, future revenue, because they can keep you at 16 and act like you don't exist anymore, the real you, right? So I think it's about education, finding an attorney that understands how this is moving the industry forward, and getting somebody who's not going to be so anti uh, technology, but be very forward thinking in this process to help protect you. So education, I guess, is the short answer.
We have a question from Emmanuel. I feel like I'm like at a telethon or something here. No, I like this question. Knowing that AI is here to stay, is there anything about the technology that excites you?
That's a great question because I
Isn't it?
feel like I've never thought of it as a way to excite me because I've been so focused on how to protect members and SAG-AFTRA members, and how I can protect my own work, protect myself, protect my likeness. So I don't know that there's anything that truly excites me about AI. If anything, I'm a little scared of how fast it's moving, how fast it's becoming something that can be used. I mean, there was a Coca-Cola commercial this past winter that was completely AI generated. And so I think I'm not really scared or not really excited. I'm more scared. I'm more thinking about how can we move, because law moves slow. Union contracts are slow, and technology is fast, way faster. We can't keep up. We have to start thinking ahead. So I think I spend most of my time more thinking about all the things that could go wrong with it so that I can try and figure out ways to implement things that will help in the future, because we have to think, 5 steps ahead at this point.
Well, since his question wasn't specific to art, he just said, did anything about AI excite me or us? I'll say, yeah. What excites me is the organization and the streamlining
Mm.
that it can assist with. That excites me because I'm a bit OCD. And when I say, let me see if it can do this, and I'm like, yes, I can streamline this process and I don't have to do all these things. That excites me. But from a creative perspective, as far as art, right, versus documentation and organization and that sort of thing, no, but yes for the documentations.
I agree with both of you. It scares me and it excites me. It scares me in terms of certainly the hallucinations, the fact that people are starting to change how they think and speak to model after the AI, the AI's ability to AI has been known to blackmail its programmers to keep from getting shut down. Things like that terrify me. On the other hand, I love access to information. And to the extent it can be trusted, and that's another thing that scares me. AI gives you even better access to information than the web itself does. That excites me. There are creative uses for AI, again, as a tool, as we've been saying, that also excite me. And on that note, we have 6 minutes max. And so I have one last question for you guys. For young creatives entering the industry now, what concrete steps would you advise they take to protect their rights, their work, and their future careers in an AI-driven industry?
Read the terms and conditions on your software.
There you go. I think for performers or for, even writers or whoever has a union within your field, the first thing you can do is join the union as quickly as possible because it's your only shield right now. It is the only shield you have as a performer at this point. The contract language we have in the SAG-AFTRA contracts is the only thing protecting you and your likeness. So join the union as quickly as possible. As Monica was saying earlier, you need to stay educated about the technology. You need to know what's going on. If you're able to, copyright anything that's eligible and speak up. Speak up about what's going on. I believe Jason had asked a question about movements and how we get the word out to consumers. I think the more awareness and the more pushback that we do as a community of artists, the better off we'll be.
I think these are very good answers. I thank you both for being here today and doing this with me. I think you have provided huge insights that people would not have been able to get otherwise. And I think it's a great service to the community and to the industry. I also want to thank all of you for being here today. If you enjoyed it, your friends can watch it again on the same link you got here with. So pass it on to your friends. I do hope we will see some of you in the eCornell class, or the MSLS, why can't I say that, class. One's available now, the other's coming up in the spring. I look forward to seeing you guys there. And also stay alert. Cornell has lots and lots of these expert talks on various subjects. Join us whenever you can. They're usually pretty interesting. Thank you very much. And well, we'll see you around campus. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.